Welcome to Uncover the Human, where every conversation revolves around enhancing all the connections in our lives.
Whether that's with our families, co-workers, or even ourselves.
When we can be our authentic selves, magic happens. This is Alex Cullimore.
And this is Cristina Amigoni.
Let's dive in. Welcome back to this episode of Uncover the Human. Today it's a host episode, Cristina and we are here to talk about, actually, this is our, I believe, going to be our New Year's episode. So that's
the plan.
Welcome to 2025. I mean, we're not in 2025, but you are.
We've invented time machine. Time
You're
travel.
Welcome. This is a message from the past. But also in your present. And if that's not relativity, I definitely don't know what is. I actually spent a little while on a rabbit hole yesterday trying to look up general relativity and a bunch of explain it to me like I'm five posts, and I couldn't get it. Okay.
So does that mean that you haven't quite reached 5-year-old maturity, or that the explanation was not actually what it claimed to be?
Well, it turns out that because the speed of light is constant, no matter how fast you're moving, that changes time. And I have yet to figure out how those connect, and having not studied physics for several years and only gotten to a very nominal level. I think there might just be a gap in amount of ability to understand that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. Yeah.
And that's the topic we wanted to talk about today, general relativity and our poor interpretations of it.
And what we don't understand about it. Yes.
The vastness of things we don't know. It's a long episode about quantum physics. Very interesting stuff, though. Basically, I'm not going to go into that. I could go into a whole rabbit hole on that because I went down a rabbit hole last night.
It feels like you kind of have to.
Well, we can talk about how Einstein proved basically the idea that that past, present, and future all exist kind of all at the same time in its own dimension, and space-time being continually connected implies that while there are many conceptions of the present, it essentially means that given that my now might be different than somebody else's now, depending on where they are and how they're traveling through space-time, that their now might be 1950s now for us, or their now might be 2050 for us, and so those do technically exist on the same timeline and at a different timeline at the same time. Anyway, that's exactly what I'm sure everybody tuned into our podcast for. I think everybody was like, "What if they discuss general relativity today? I should check in."
Well, talking about time relativity and past, present, and future all existing at once. Yes, we wanted to talk about the New Year itch, the January 1st itch.
Yes.
People get.
Yes, the craze for change and the idea that this turning of the calendar and that one of the bigger numbers on the three numbers that we tend to track, day, month, and year, the change of a year kind of implies this kind of change and a new start. And, there's a lot of people who have commented on the fact that it is generally disappointing. It's hard to get New Year's resolutions that stick. We do want some amount of change. We kind of create this pressure around this first of the year date that some of you might be listening to this on.
And some may be in 1950 on January 10th listening to this, so we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely listening. Well, if that's there now, we don't exist yet. None of us have been born yet, but also we're here. So we're also unborn, dead,
back to time travel,
alive, all at the same time. And if that doesn't inspire you to reach your goals, I don't know what will. So.
Yeah, the fact that we're all born, dead, and alive at the same time, that's... Yes, let me get my pad and start making my list of goals.
I know I, for one, am about to drop to the floor and start those push-ups I swore I would do. So, but in a way, I've already done them. And if that's not...
You have, yes. Help. I know. And you've already lost the muscle mass from not doing them consistently.
Yes. The circle of life and relativity.
So why bother doing them to begin with?
Confuse people. This is your confusion right now as the listener is my confusion looking up explained to me like I'm 5 relativity posts.
So back to January 1st.
Yes.
Or
We all
fast
feel this,
forward to January 1st, or present January 1st, if you're listening to that on January
or
1st.
think back on your January 1st and,
Yes.
past the clouds of hangovers from your New Year's party, ready for the day, thinking about the new year that will be the bright future that is a little too bright.
Yes.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about things that we discuss. We discuss these things in organizational change, but they are really just macro versions of what happens for personal change. So either way,
Hmm.
you can map these to trying to create change in life. And since January 1st tends to create that itch, maybe it's that we've all had the holidays and relaxed, and now suddenly we feel like we have to jump back in, or maybe we just have energy from having rested up a little bit and we're ready to go create those changes that have felt stagnant by the end of the year. We're ready to jump in. So let's talk about some of the things that can come up that make change difficult or make change maybe the wrong change to embark on. So there's a lot of different angles we can start with. Where would you like to start?
Mm. There are different angles. Maybe we should start with the should trap, since there is that January 1st itch comes with the should of like
Hmm.
things should change. We should reorganize. We should start doing push-ups. We should eat healthy. We
Hmm.
should whatever the shoulding. There's a lot
Yes.
of shoulding because of the
Right.
January
Shit all over
1st
yourself, as
itch.
they say.
Yes, yes. There's somehow that pressure of there's a magic wand. And so if we don't do anything drastic to make a big change on the day that we're probably least likely to actually make anything stick, then we are there's whatever shame and guilt goes along with that. We are going to fail as a company. We are going to be behind the market. We are going to never be healthy again. We will, whatever.
Yes. Yeah, so we discussed should trap. We said the should trap, and there are several traps that we've kind of defined here that are easy things to fall into when you're trying to change. A should is a great one because we do feel like, oh, I should
Hmm.
make some resolutions. I should change something about myself this year. And the real question to get to is why that's important to
Hmm.
you. Why something needs to happen. Like in companies, definitely like you mentioned, it can be like an industry trend. We feel like we should do this because I heard it on a podcast, or because I feel like other companies are doing it, or whatever. It seems like the industry is doing this. We should be part of that.
And
AI is a
just
big
to
one that
note,
happened over the last
if you
year.
hear in our podcast, you definitely should do it.
All of these things are absolutely accurate, and you should absolutely fall for every trend. That's what we're trying to say. Shoulds are musts.
When you listen to us, when you listen to other people, maybe not.
Only our advice is correct. But in relativistic sense, it's both correct and incorrect, set and unset, known and unknown,
True and untrue.
true and untrue. And it's up for you to decide where in your space-time should continuum. This is actually a decent metaphor for it. There are some objects with large mass in in the industry continuum, and we feel like those become shoulds. There's a lot of people
Yes.
following Amazon for what they're doing, following Google
Hmm.
for what they're doing, and those do those necessarily apply? No, those don't blanket apply to everybody, nor are they necessarily correct at Amazon, nor will they be correct all
Hmm.
the time, even if it does work for now. So let's think about what should really means. Is it that external should that you just feel like you should do this? People say, being healthy is important, so I should do this. Is there just, are you trying to tell other people they should do something without being direct enough? There's a lot of different ways you can fall into a should trap where you're stuck on something that may not actually resonate with you personally. And so it's worth some investigation as you look at your list of potential resolutions, or as you think about creating resolutions, which
Hmm.
again, not a necessity, but since it's so common this time of year, it's worth talking about.
Hmm.
Uh, what are you really saying when you have resolutions? I'm going to be healthier this year. It's not a bad goal. It's not bad to be
Hmm.
healthy, but what is it that you really want from that? Why is
Hmm.
being healthy important to you? And that
And why
might
is it a
be,
change? So if we're
yes.
making it as a new year thing, then it's a change. So have you been unhealthy this whole time? Is
Mhm.
that the change? Like, what are you comparing it to?
Yes. That's a great one. What is the level of quote unquote health that you want to get to? Is
Hmm.
this is throwing that, against the wall of like, oh, well, I saw somebody, on Instagram or in a magazine that drinks exclusively green juice and works out 7 times a day. Like if that's your definition of healthy, I guess it really depends on your starting place as to how
Hmm.
achievable that's going to be in the near
Yeah.
term.
Yeah.
or whether that's worth it again. Why
Mm-hmm.
why do you want to do that? Is it that you want to be healthier because you want the longevity of that? Is it important just to have the mobility? And this is definitely something that has come up a lot as I've watched some people close to me aging, it becomes important to think about just, hey, you're putting a lot of work in, and now means that when you're 70, when you're 75, you still have things
Mm-hmm.
like mobility. And there's examples around the world. And I remember watching that Blue Zone documentary, and there's plenty of people
Mm-hmm.
who have lived over 90 and maybe over 100, and they're moving on their own. They don't have a lot of medications, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. And part of that is just continual bits of mobility that they practice throughout their entire lives. And so maybe that's a goal. That's going to be something that can help you center on why this is actually important, not just the vague feeling that like, oh, I feel like I should be more healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a big part of that is also really going back to like if a should comes up internally or externally, we should change because this is not working. Well, first define what this is and what's not working about it before going to like, let's just change, which brings us to the second change trap. But, the should change, should just change because this is not working. But have you actually analyzed what this is? Why is it
Yeah.
not working? What was your expectation that's not being met?
Hmm.
And then, if a change is necessary, what degree of a change?
Hmm.
What's the realistic point of that change? And just as personal changes on January 1st, that is a really tough time to actually make a change.
Yeah. It's dark. We're all recovering.
Yes, we're still in the middle of the holidays. People are off, they're trying to relax. And when they know that there's a change is looming, how relaxed are you going to be during the
Hmm.
holidays? How are you actually going to be able to be present in the end of the year, in the holiday season, in being with your loved ones, in relaxing, in resting, in doing whatever you need to reset to start, to then get to a new month, a new day, or whatever it's needed. But why, with the pressure of that, it's January 1st, let's revolutionize our lives in one way or another, or let's revolutionize our organization in one way or another. It's like, why January 1st?
Hmm.
It's out of all the dates and all the months of the year, I can't think of possibly a worse time to decide to revolutionize.
I don't know. For me in August, there's a lot of just general lethargy where I'm just like, you know what? It's summer. It's nice. What am I going to do? Change everything right now?
Yeah. I mean, there's never a great time to create, revolutionized changes. And when you know it's looming and you don't even get to enjoy the time that you need to rest and reset, I would say that's probably a really bad time.
Yeah. So that is a nice transition. So first we talk about shoulds, where we really want to get to the root of what we want to change, what kind of scale we want to change, and why we want to change it. So we can really ground ourselves in why this is important to us. So it's really important to ask what we tend to go to questions, things like what am I trying to accomplish? How would I know I'm successful? Why is that important to me? And what can get in the way? Those are the ones that we can really dig into and really understand what is important about this change, which also allows us to change the goals instead of just being like, well, I definitely need to work out for 30 minutes a day. Like that's
Mhm.
very arbitrary. Maybe it helps you set something. It's not that it can't help you set a pattern, but that doesn't answer the why of what you're really getting to. And if you know the why, that allows you to flex around the things that you're talking about, where it's, hey, the life circumstances are coming up around.
Mhm.
This is also the holidays. Oh, they're changing something at work. Now that's going to take more of my time there than I thought was going
Mhm.
to happen. Life's always going to happen. How can you keep yourself on that North Star? And half of that begins at defining the North Star beyond that external should. And that moves us into the just trap. It's a good transition to that because
Yes.
just is what we really fall into. We're like, oh, I'm just changing this portion.
Yeah. No,
Yes,
you're
but
not.
it's always connected to everything else.
Yes.
We often talk about like understanding the web of a change, the ripples of a change, with asking web questions. What else belongs? Who else belongs? What am I not considering is the real question. What do I need to do if I want to? I'm just going to keep using the get healthier example. If you want to
Hmm.
add, working out to your routine, great. What does that mean for your routine? What do you have to
Yes.
wake up much earlier so that you still have the time to
Hmm.
get kids ready before school? Do you have to change your schedule? And what will you do when there are inevitable conflicts? How will you be able to get yourself
Hmm.
up if you've been somebody who doesn't get up at 5 a.m., what is the likelihood that suddenly
Hmm.
January 1st, you're getting up at 5 a.m. every day? And how
Hmm.
likely is that to be sustainable? And what does that mean for the rest of your day? You now have this, like, okay, are you going to take an hour off of, the evening time so you sleep earlier, so you still get the amount of sleep? That this one change isn't just that change, it's
Yeah.
everything that will be impacted by that. Who else will be impacted by that? What else will you have to change? And these aren't bad things. It's not bad that other things have to change, but if we can consider those, we might be less blindsided by the eventual ripple effects that always happen with change. Since change is always happening all the time, we can guarantee there are ripple effects that are already coming
Hmm.
for your change, and your change will cause ripple effects.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then you have, especially if you think about the healthy, there's so many consequences. How does your nutrition need to change? Which means how does your grocery shopping need to change? How you preserve your food, how you prepare your food, how much time you use to prepare your food? How does that impact the meals that you have with other people in your household? I mean, you could infinitely look at the ripple effects of something. So using the just, it feels like it's a way to minimize the amount of change that's going to be impacted. And it's a way to make it digestible, which is not a bad thing if we're not blind to the impacts of the ripples.
Yeah, it is sometimes helpful in the small steps, getting a habit started kind of way, where it's like, well, I told myself I'm just going to run 5 minutes today. Like that, it's just 5 minutes. I'll get to there. Maybe
Yeah.
that helps us, mentally frame that as well as give
Hmm.
ourselves the time to do it. It's when we minimize the overall change and we say, this is
Hmm.
just this portion of my life, that we might end up being blindsided by a bunch of things that will make it more difficult to make that change. So both for the should and the just, there are questions you can ask yourself to kind of get to the bottom of
Hmm.
what's happening, as well as there's the conscious awareness of when the words should and just appear in your resolutions, appear in your mind, appear in the thoughts that you have about the change. So being conscious of those, well, I should just do this, those are very big triggers for, hey, I haven't figured out why this is important to me if I'm trying to
Hmm.
force myself to
Yes.
do this, or we haven't figured out what else is being impacted if I can't seem to get to this.
Hmm. Yeah. And if we don't create that foundation and that true understanding of all the ripple effects, it's the ripple effects that are going to throw us back into the past
Hmm.
and make it easier to give up. Even from an organizational point of view, even something saying like, "Oh, we're just switching from Slack to Microsoft Teams." I would say that's not a just by a lot.
Yeah.
The consequences of that are way bigger than just click on a new icon and
Hmm.
use that.
Yeah. Well, you can still message teammates. Yes, but this is also a document storage. This is also tied to a
Exactly.
bunch of automations. This is also tied to people's calendars. This is also tied to a bunch of meeting invites that are already on a calendar. If
Yes.
you don't have Teams anymore, you can't use a Teams link or vice versa. It's just
Yes.
what happens when you just change that? And that's one thing
Yes.
to think about especially in higher levels of leadership where you're like, well, we're just changing this process. And what are all the other thousands of processes that have to change for that?
Yes.
How many people are affected by that? What will they have to do? And I'm not saying that any of these are insurmountable, but if you're thinking of it as, oh, it's just a small change, it might be just a small change for you, and that
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge change down the line. And we often think of that as kind of a pendulum. You might make a small, or like a swinging, stopwatch or something from somebody's hand. You might make a small adjustment, but that wristwatch is going flying back and forth when you get down the chain and down the chain.
Indeed. Yeah. So our next one, I would say it's putting the cart before the horse.
Hmm, a good one. Yes. So jumping straight from idea to action, we think I'm
Yes.
going to be healthier, and then we slap on our running shoes and try and run 5 miles. Like
Yes.
it's
Or
to
sign
be
up for a
stretched. Do we
marathon.
figure out whether we can do that? Did we?
Yes. Or I'm gonna wake up on January 1st and go hike my first 14er.
Hmm.
It's possible. You may want to consider all the other things that are impacted by that and what you need for that.
Yeah. I'm going to start a book club. I'm going to do this. So, like, is the first week? Are you going to get everybody to have
Hmm.
accepted, read the book, and invited? Like, there's so much that has to happen between idea and action, and we might not communicate enough of that to ourselves, to everybody else that's going to be impacted. And jumping straight from like, oh, I think I want to do this to it's happening. We might miss all of those. First of all the
Hmm.
questions we just asked, like what is important about this? Why are we doing it? And what else is going to be impacted? Have we communicated that to people? Is everybody else on board? And it's
Huh.
not that they have to be 100% on board, but know where your points of resistance are. Know what the resistance is. If you say I'm gonna go, train for a triathlon, well, how does that impact your entire household? You being out an hour a day trying to do something or train, well, okay, so what happens to whatever needs to be done, at home for
Hmm.
that hour? These aren't insurmountable, but if you have no dialogue up front, it's going to be much more disruptive to yourself
Hmm.
and to everyone else impacted.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, my family and I just spent this year 5 months in Italy. And if I had gone from we're going to go to Italy for 5 months to, oh, and our plane is tomorrow, pack your bags, I'm pretty sure I would have been the only one at the airport.
That's if you could even convince yourself of like, yeah, I'm doing this.
Exactly. That is even if I got my own bags packed by then.
It's it's easy to because it's exciting. And when we have an idea,
Yeah.
sometimes we're just so excited about the idea that we don't even want to pause to investigate all
Hmm.
these things. Or we had the idea. It seems like a great idea. I can't believe everybody wouldn't be on board or that we wouldn't just jump into this. And so we forget that there's kind of the buy-in for both ourselves as well as the investigation for what else is going to be part of this. Is this the right decision? And what can we do to support this? Those are all things can easily be skipped if we go right to the cart before the horse and jump straight into the action.
Yes. It doesn't help that we now live in a society of immediate satisfaction, immediate resolution of anything we can think of. You know, if I think of like, oh, I would love to have a unicorn singing Christmas carols for Christmas, I could probably go on Amazon, look it up, order it, and it'll be at my doorstep tonight.
Yeah,
So living in this type of reality doesn't help. And when we think about what it actually takes to go from idea to implementation of the idea, it's worth pausing and actually going through the steps.
that goes back to getting to that why it's important to do it because
Yes.
the things that tend to be important, obviously something that you want to just get off Amazon, either it's a matter of like saving up to be able to get it or it's just a matter of clicking a button. So there are definitely lots of changes that can be immediate. And I think our brain gets used to that. It feels like things can just happen quickly.
Hmm.
Why like waiting is almost like well, that's an inconvenience. I could probably find this faster somewhere else. But the things that we tend to care about, relationships, being healthy, whatever other aspects, those are long-term investments. Those are
Yes.
things that take a while. And so knowing that and getting into the real root why of why we're doing that in the first place keeps us going and understanding and keeps us on track and gets us again a North Star to focus ourselves on so that we can continue to go when the going eventually inevitably gets more tough than just the exciting initial idea.
Yeah. Well, and also doing all the discerning. Like what happens between idea and implementation and action is the discerning. The getting buy-in from anybody that is involved and it's going to be impacted, but also the discerning. Do I need a Christmas carol singing unicorn for my
Mhm.
living room? No. What would I do with it? Why do I want it? What's going to happen when I have it and it's annoying and it's too big for the living room?
And the unicorn gets hauled out behind the shed. And then sadly,
Exactly. And it doesn't fit in in my trash can and now I can't even get rid of it.
and now I have a recycling issue to deal with on top of this.
Exactly. So maybe before I press buy on Amazon, I should probably think about it
Hmm.
and evaluate the
Yeah.
idea.
So really getting into discerning what about the idea is doable as well as
Yes.
necessary. Why now? What do we think what are the benefits of this? But change is always difficult. Our brains are there to work on as low calorie mode as possible, which is as default as possible, whether that's effective for us. So if we're going to make the change and do the calorically expensive, mentally taxing change, what makes that worth it? What would be the reason that other people would want to jump in so that they would spend that effort to be able to do this?
Yes. Yeah. Which takes us to un lack of clarity versus ambiguity. So
Yes,
we
unclarity versus
hear,
ambiguity.
yeah, so we hear a lot the whole get comfortable with ambiguity, get comfortable with change. Change is never ending. And yes, it's true. Like, and as humans, I think we're all wired. We're all wired for patterns, but we're all wired to be comfortable with ambiguity because we live in ambiguity more times
Yeah.
than not during the day. It could be
Hmm.
anything from we wake up and it snowed and the roads are icy.
Hmm.
And now there's a whole ambiguity around, is school going to be delayed? Is it not going to be delayed? Do we want to keep the kids at home? Do I want to drive in this? If I drive in it, do I leave earlier? What's going to happen? Where's the traffic? So we're navigating ambiguity all day long, even for the
Hmm.
small things. So I feel that it's a little condescending to ex- to assume that people can't handle ambiguity because humans actually can. They do all the time.
Hmm.
And it can be used as an excuse to not provide clarity. I'm like, well, that's just ambiguity and you need to get used to it. I'm like, no, that's just not clear.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with ambiguity.
Yes. Yeah, those are the really I think people tend to switch to the micro or macro and skip all of the in between. Like, well, we've told people that they should climb that mountain. What do they want us to tell them every single step along the way? Like, no, nobody wants or expects that. That doesn't mean that they might not want some guidance on which route is good to take, whether they can go into this valley, whether they need to be
Yeah.
expert rock climbers by the end of it. Like, what pieces need to happen? What
Yes.
is what are you being unclear about? Versus what is the actual goal? Do people know that? It's people are willing
Am I
to
climbing the
flex.
mountain?
Yes.
What am I going to do when
Yes.
I'm on top of the mountain?
Yes.
When do you
How is it
expect
going to
me to
look
be on the
when I get
top of the
there?
mountain? Can I choose when I climb it, or are you going to tell me when to climb it?
Yes. Do I have a choice in this mountain? Can I tell you that I
Yes,
don't think this is the right mountain?
exactly. Is it clear what all going to get when we're all on top of the mountain?
Yes.
Or are we going to realize we just climbed the wrong one because we never discerned the idea before we told everybody climb the mountain?
Super easy thing to fall into organizationally because there's an idea, you try and distill it to a form that can be communicated. You send that out, and then you kind of assume people have all of the background that was boiled into the more succinct statements that you've given them, and you've largely, generally, as leadership teams, you've had so much time to sit and digest a change that you're now more comfortable with the ins and outs of it, and then you announce it, and it can be naturally a bit difficult if we don't continually put ourselves into the more empathetic position to forget that other people haven't had that time. It might have taken us 6 months to come together with that plan. How long this person's now had 15 minutes to understand what is going to drastically change about their lives. This is something they're going to need some time for, as well as understand more details of. No matter how much you've fleshed out or tried to answer as many questions ahead of time, there'll be things you've missed, and that's not actually a bad thing. You just have to be ready to listen to them. You just have to be ready to hear the things that are coming in. And you'd have to be ready to recalibrate when you're like, yeah, this is the idea. And then somebody's like, actually, there's a huge roadblock you didn't consider. You're like, well, maybe
Yes.
that's true. Maybe you didn't consider that. Maybe you do have to recalibrate.
Hmm.
And that's not a bad thing. That's actually way better to know that than to go ram your car into a roadblock.
Yes, indeed. And those are the pieces. So when providing clarity, it's really about providing the clarity of what is the experience that I'm expecting? What is the
Hmm.
experience that you're going to have? Which in turn is going to impact the experience that I have.
Hmm.
What are my expectations of your behaviors? What are my expectations of the outcomes? If we can't have a clear understanding of that, if we cannot paint a clear picture that is valid for, like a 5-year-old to understand time relativity, then we're not being clear enough. Then that's not discomfort with ambiguity. That's just lack of clarity. So be clear.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very delicate kind of balance, and the best ways to kind of get through that are to be able to hear what people are asking. Because you can definitely have people who, just because they already had a bunch of change, or they're currently having something going on in their personal lives you might not even know about, they might seem like they are resisting even harder, and that's when it falls into those more condescending patterns of like, well, just get used to change. Like, I'm tired of hearing that people aren't ready for change. Change happens all the time. You're not wrong, and there's probably a reason that it's there, and
Hmm.
maybe it's valid, maybe the person just needs some time, but either way, it's not going to be helped by just forcing that. You have to get
Yeah.
to the root cause of like, is this person just going to resist this no matter what? Are they pretending like they're okay with it, but they're not? Are they what are they just need a little time to get used to it, or they have a concern that just hasn't been addressed, they don't feel heard on it? Any of those things are much easier to resolve than we think, They just require a little of that time, curiosity, and listening. And that is just as true with personal change. You got to listen to yourself a little bit for when you just have a goal that you're starting to realize you're unclear on. It's okay to continue to recalibrate that. It's okay to continue to
Yeah.
refine that. You might not have gotten it right, even if you wrote it down, even if you put out a whole plan. If it doesn't make sense, you might have to change the plan. What's the point of continuing on one that is you now know to be wrong, but you'd rather just stick with the plan because it took you a while to come up with that plan?
Mm-hmm.
I understand the impulse.
Yeah.
It's natural to want to stick with that. It doesn't mean that it's helpful
Yeah.
or
This is
successful.
when Adam Grant's approach of think again comes in because, okay, you had the idea, you communicated the idea, you've figured out new things along the way on why the idea, as stated, may not work and it needs tweaking or it needs to be tossed out completely. That's okay.
Yeah. In
You're
fact, that
not
should happen. You
incompetent. You will
should be
not lose
gathering
your
all that
identity.
information.
It's okay to rethink. Not only it's okay, it's absolutely necessary to
Yes.
rethink. Otherwise, we're all going to climb the wrong mountain, be exhausted, lose half the people, and then realize we're not even in the right mountain chain and we should have gone and crossed the sea.
Yes. Yes, it's easy to fall into patterns, and we can even get sometimes accused of not doing enough planning, not thinking of things through, not like, "Well, I can't believe we didn't see that roadblock coming." And maybe there's times where we could have seen something, maybe not, but either way, we've now hit that roadblock, or we now see the roadblock,
Hmm.
and we have to adjust. And going back into blame is a bit of a human reaction and an understandable
Hmm.
like first knee-jerk reaction, but it doesn't make it helpful or useful. It's
Yeah.
just something that happens.
Yes, it is. And you touched on change resistance a little bit, so that's our last
Mhm.
trap, underestimating change resistance. People are resisting a change, figure out why, as opposed
Mhm.
to you resisting their resistance to change. Now, who's resisting change?
Mhm.
It becomes a meta resistance.
Yes, it's incredible. We have a nice diagram that has a lot of just different examples of what it might sound like, and these are just obviously a little bit high level, but there's things like, "Oh, I'm totally on board, but I mean, I don't need to change, right?" Or, "I don't know how this applies to me," or, I don't know what this new reality is. I don't know if I have a place in this. This isn't who I wanted to be. This is now an identity challenge. Here we go again. I don't think this change is going to stick." And you can hear these things echo both organizationally and likely if you've listened to your own mind trying to push resolutions or changes in your own life that have not felt quite right. These are also things that come up.
Mhm.
We also guilt ourselves or shame ourselves for like, am I just lazy? Why am I not making this change? How can I not do this? Don't I
Yes.
care? Just as much as we can look around, at in a company or a group or an organization and be like, don't they care? Why aren't they doing this? They aren't doing this
Mhm.
correctly. How come it's much easier to externalize those generally, but it doesn't mean they're not the same tones and same reasoning we bring out against ourselves and we use against ourselves when we're also resisting change. And so this is a time to really get into that curious space, understand why that
Yes.
resistance is happening. Maybe that person never will be on board, and
Mhm.
it's a conversation of this is the way this is going.
Yeah.
If you're not on board, unfortunately, maybe there's the door. Maybe that's
Yes.
what it is, or it's what is it that is particularly frustrating about this, and trying to give
Hmm.
yourself the patience and the space enough to listen to that, and making a judgment call on when it's too many cycles of the same conversation where you're like, I don't think they're telling me the truth. I think they're just
Yes.
resisting this, and we need to have either a more frank conversation and get to that, or we won't be able to push this going
Hmm.
forward,
Yeah. A
and
lot
for
of that
ourselves.
is providing that clarity. You know, one of my favorite quotes is people, humans don't resist change. They don't resist evolution. They resist revolutions. And revolutions include a radical shift of things.
Mhm.
And so if they don't understand the why, this is actually a better way or a better idea or the idea of a possibly better approach to do things as opposed to the current state. If they don't understand what their place is, if they can't picture their future state and understand what their experience is going to be, and if they're not actually clearly told what the expectations for them personally are, that's when change resistance is going to go up. It's like an idea is an idea is an idea is an idea. An idea is not going to do anything. And so an idea may make sense for people that are paid to have ideas. I've done
Mhm.
my job, had the idea, done. Now everybody else has to figure it out. But the people that actually have to make it happen, they need to understand what the expectations of their new behavior is. What am I
Hmm.
doing today that I need to stop? What do I need to continue? And what do I need to start? If we can't provide that clarity, then the idea we have is not clear.
Yeah, it's not formed
It's
enough yet.
just an idea.
Hmm. And that doesn't mean you can't talk to the people about that to help
No.
fill in those gaps. It just means
Yes.
that it's not quite there yet. And once you fill in the gaps, then you can be more
Yes.
there. And the other exercise that I believe this came out of a Pat Lencioni book, but another exercise to help you flesh that out is thinking about dilemmas you're going to face.
Hmm.
So you want to make this change. Now you're in this very common situation of you have a conflict between two choices that both might seem valid. In the new world, with the new change, with the new idea that you want to implement, what is the right decision at this point? Now we have
Hmm.
a budget versus priority issue, or we have two
Yeah.
competing priorities. How do we decide which one's more important? Or
Hmm.
oh, we realized we underestimated or overestimated something. What do we do now?
Yeah.
These are the dilemmas. These are the points, the decision points that we can elaborate on to help give people an idea of exactly what we mean when we say this is the change, these are the behaviors we're expecting, these are the choices we would
Hmm.
expect to see. And it doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean it's what was done before. Usually it's because it's not what was done before that we need to identify these things, and be really clear and again, provide that clarity that helps people understand this is what we're really going for. And that gives you a chance to have that honest conversation of, is this something you're on board with? Is this something you're
Hmm.
going to do? Or are you resisting for some other reason?
Yep. Indeed. So when you get that January 1st itch before January 1st, and you're looking at big or small personal and professional changes, think like what shoulds are you asking yourself? Are you using? What justs are you using? What are you not considering? Like, do you actually have a clear understanding of how you're going to get from idea to implementation, or is it just an idea? What clarity is needed to understand what the experience in the future is going to be and what you expect others to do if they're involved? And then figure out the change resistance piece. Who's resisting change? Why are they resisting it? Are you providing the clarity? Is there something else underneath that you haven't considered?
I think that if you want to practice this on a small scale, you can also consider change resistance personally.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many little things that you can get better at listening to. I remember I mean, there's things like I went and did a lot of triathlon training last year, and you can get into these ruts where you're like, why am I just not? I'm not quite getting up to what I thought I'd be doing. I'm not doing as much as I thought I would be doing. And sometimes it's as simple as like you find out like, yeah, I haven't been biking as much because I get frustrated because I don't have enough athletic socks. And
Hmm.
so I've been resisting because I have to go up there and then find out if I have any socks or not. And if I don't have any socks, I'm gonna have to go start some laundry. And that goes down the path. Whereas you could
Hmm.
spend $10 on a few more
Hmm.
athletic socks and suddenly that's resolved. Just because there is resistance and because it is
Yes.
creating stoppage doesn't mean it's a massive
Hmm.
resistance. It might just be something small, and we can get better at listening internally, which gives us a foothold towards what might be happening for other people and what
Yes.
questions can we ask to see what's happening for other people. Because
Yes.
sometimes it's the smallest of things that end up
Yeah.
making a big impact. I think my favorite story is from a business book I read at some point about a company that was trying to fix its culture and make morale better, and they redid their office, tried to have like more, happy hours and parties, and tried to get people together and tried to have like fun events. And it turns out one of the thing that ended up making a huge difference like 2 months later is they spent $300 on a new printer, and people were so frustrated with the printer, but because everyone used it, like this new printer just
Yes.
did the job, and suddenly like morale was up, people were less frustrated. Like it
Yes.
was just something, and it's not like people would necessarily even bring that up on a survey. Maybe people have complained about it, but this is why you can totally go down the wrong rabbit hole. But there might be something that's actually pretty straightforward that helps a
Hmm.
lot, that helps people
Yes.
a lot to get on board with this, or just helps yourself. So give
Yes.
yourself some of that grace and space and curiosity when you're in the
Yeah.
middle of a change that doesn't feel like it's sticking, or you feel like you're hitting some roadblock. What are the things that could be small tweaks
Hmm.
that may make this way easier? And how can we
That's a
get
great
better
one.
in touch with that?
Yeah. That is a great one. So, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Enjoy the new you or the same you or whatever you want to be.
Or whatever you. Your past, present, and future you.
They all exist at the same time.
Yes. Time is an illusion.
You can relatively enjoy this.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.